This is an introduction to the systems development lifecycle. It's a concept and a methodology that is really useful for us to consider at the beginning of the course because we'll see how it is woven into different concepts that we'll consider as we move forward. So every time you've got a new app or a new website or a new piece of software, starts off as an idea, some problem, some challenge that needs to be solved. And for the best outcomes, they happened because there was a logical cycle that was followed in order to bring that idea into reality. So it's that structured process that makes it possible to have a solution that meets the needs of the users and that is really robust and strong and something that we can all use and enjoy. So here we're going to look at the systems development lifecycle and how it can be used to take these ideas and turn them into technological solutions. So this is the process. And I want to tell you at this point that if you were to Google the systems development life cycle, there are actually several different cycles. This one that we're covering has 6 steps. Sometimes there are 7 or 8 steps. But no matter what, you can see a lot of commonalities around them. So this is going to be our common understanding of the systems development life cycle. Again, the language, the terminology varies a bit, but generally all of the similar methodologies follow the same general outline. So it's a step-by-step process that you can follow and helps to make sure that these projects can develop without missing any important details, minimizing risk and things like that. So these are the phases: the planning phase, analysis, design, development phase, implementation phase, and the maintenance phase. So we're going to go through each of these quickly, but I want you to refer back to this diagram. It's really kind of sums up everything and some details on each one. So refer to this, add it to your notes, and make sure that you use it as we're continuing to move through the course. So, before we dive into the details of these, it's helpful to think about this systems development lifecycle as something that's not just for technological projects, but something that really you can use in other areas of life, and in fact have used in other areas of life. So, we're talking in a technology course, we're talking about how it can be used for websites and databases and things like that. But think about your journey as you were planning to go to college and deciding which major you would pursue. You essentially went through these same steps: a planning and analysis phase, um, the design phase as in terms of choosing your college path and then choosing your courses, and then enrolling and attending school is like the implementation phase, and then getting the support you need along the way, keeping your assignments turned in, keeping your grades up. That is related to the maintenance phase. Same thing with buying a car, which you may or may not have had a chance to do that yet. But again, you're planning a budget, looking at your options, doing a test drive, all of that related to the planning and then the analysis and design phase, making that purchase, implementation phase, and then making sure you maintain the vehicle over time. So as we dig into each of these steps, think about this as kind of a general concept that you would follow in other areas of life, and that's going to help you to become more familiar with it as we consider it in the context of technology systems. So first, the planning phase. So this really boils down to personnel, schedule, and budget. So you're figuring out what the team is involved, whether you're hiring a contractor or you've got a team within your organization, figuring out who the people are or what skills you need to contribute, figuring out what the timeline is. Is this something that's being driven by some, an upcoming conference or some sort of event that's coming and you've got a certain budget in order to fit the needs of your event. So you're thinking about all of those details in your planning phase. It's important to think that this could be planning a very small event or it could be planning the launch of a show. So definitely the level of detail of each of these phases is going to very much depend on the size and scale of the project. They're actually um, full methodologies and certificate programs and credentials related just to project management. And a lot of that you would see in kind of a deep dive into the planning phase. But for our purposes, think about personnel, the schedule and the timeline, schedule and the timeline, and then the budget, and then those general tasks related to planning the overall project itself. Think about the analysis phase. My favorite way to look at this is in this three-word definition, which I found in a textbook for one of the classes I've taught in the past. And it's understand the problem. The real key here is figuring out what are you trying to solve with this technology. So if you are actually heading into a field where you're going to be doing software development, things like that, it's a matter of understanding the needs of your users, whether they're in a research lab or a theater company or anything else. Your users need your technology solution in order to solve some problem. If you are the subject matter expert in those fields of medical research or law or education or entertainment, things like that, then you are looking for some sorts of software solutions that are going to facilitate you doing your job and running your events or organizing your team or your resources more effectively. So this really is the heart of the whole project. And this keeps us from just making things that are just cool and interesting, but not actually solving real problems and meeting real needs. So it looks like a lot of research, figuring out what the goals are, doing requirements determination, a lot of interviews and focus groups with current users, both internal users and then also customers outside of the organization, if that's relevant. All of that research, the more time you spend here in the analysis phase, the better off you are in terms of preparing to actually build a solution that's really going to work. Next, we have the design phase, and this varies depending on what you're building. If you're doing a website, then you're looking at drawing out the diagram to show what each page would look like, looking at color scheme and layout and things like that. Also relevant for any kind of UI, user interface or user experience design that you're doing. You're thinking about what path a user is going to take through the system, figuring out what features are going to be offered and how. If you think about any app that you use and the different screens you have to kind of click and move through the app to choose settings, things like that, all of that is part of the design phase. Again, depending on the scale of this project, sometimes it's done kind of by hand. I like to actually start with just a pencil or one of my drawing apps on a tablet and just kind of freeform putting ideas down before really diving into formal design software or any other formal design tools. I find it really helpful for taking kind of a brainstorming approach to this first and then going from there. I think my first kind of full software build that I did, I think I had like maybe not a literal napkin, but it was really just kind of sitting at a table talking to someone, grabbed a sheet of paper and just scribbled some things out. So starting there and then maturing all the way into outlines and drafts and what we call storyboards in web design and different types of visual design. Again, if you are talking about a more large scale development, this could also include making prototypes, kind of little demo versions of something. If you look at the videos with crash test dummies for vehicles, that is a form of the design process where you've done made a skeleton, so to speak, of the vehicle, and then you're doing some testing, and then you're looking at making improvements before you actually go ahead and build the whole thing. So again, this will vary depending on the type of project, but the design phase is a really important part about figuring out what you are doing. Now, those of you who really enjoy writing code, you're going to be most tempted to skip this phase. This is the part you're going to just want to just start coding things. And so I just want to caution you, don't move ahead too fast. Because you don't want to miss anything, and it's a lot easier to change something on a sheet of paper or in a storyboard app or something like that. It's a lot easier to change that than once something is already built and then you find out that you needed, oh no, we had a user need and now we've got some structural change that needs to happen. Now you've thrown your project off by a couple of weeks or a month or whatever because you needed to make a change that you would have caught if you'd been more methodical and more careful going through the analysis phase and then this design phase. So definitely take this time here. It will pay off. You'll be glad you did down the road. All right, and then comes development. So this is where you're actually writing code or actually creating the screens for your app, whatever the case may be, you're actually doing the development here. It's very important that this phase also includes testing and quality assurance of your build. So for example, in web development, it's really important to make sure that the website you build works on different types of devices. So mobile devices versus desktop devices. Or even today, I've been to websites happened even just a couple of months ago. I was on a website for a pretty substantial organization, and the website kept not working, not working. I was like, let me just try one thing. And so I was using Google Chrome. I switched to Microsoft Edge, which is not even something a lot of people are using as often. A lot of people have kind of shifted to Chrome or using Safari on a Mac or something like that. But when I used the website through Microsoft Edge, suddenly it worked. So somewhere along the line, someone missed the fact that there was some bug that happened in Google Chrome that didn't happen in Microsoft Edge. And how often would someone just be frustrated and move on instead of trying all of these different things? So writing the code, testing it under different circumstances on different devices. Um, there's also situations in our the web classes where you can make something that can work on your computer, but not on someone else's. That's because of problems with the file paths, and not something we need to dive into at this moment, but something that you may not catch if you don't try it on a different device. So really critical to make sure you do all that careful testing here before something is actually published. And then we have the implementation phase. And so this is kind of the launch, the grand opening, the ribbon cutting, when the thing actually happens. So again, in an app launch or a web development, sometimes it's easy as just pushing a publish button and it doesn't feel like that, that big of a moment. If it's something you're publishing in one of the app stores, then you're looking at a long process of approvals and everything, which again, the better your development phase is, the smoother this will go. Either way, you're actually launching the site or the app or the software out to the market, whatever the case may be. And then also doing any other sorts of kickoff activities, publicizing the launch, getting your first customers in there, doing promos, maybe social media campaigns, all of those things that are not exactly technical, um, don't really sound like programming, but they're things that really actually are critical and can lead to a successful launch, build a lot of momentum. Even getting feedback from your users, which we're going to see in the next step, is also really important. So implementation is that launch, that when the system goes online, starts being used, and then you're also preparing the environment around it. There are in some courses we talk a little bit more detail about different types of implementation, implementing um, just a few features at a time or rolling out to just a few users at a time. There are different approaches to this, which again we won't cover in this video, but is just an important consideration that there are different ways to go about rolling out a new system. And last but maybe least, I don't know. Maintenance, in my personal opinion, is kind of the boring one. I call this dishes and laundry. It's like the stuff that just, oh, it's time to, check for a system update. It's not, all of that. But even as I say that, just personally, I don't find it very exciting and creative to do. Man, there's a lot of money in maintenance. And man, if you don't do it, everything just falls apart. So think about how we have to maintain our cars, as we mentioned before, maintain our bodies, um, maintain our homes. Things like gutters. I've never really knew what the big deal was about gutters until I saw a house that had no gutters, and the way the rain poured down and just water management and damage to the paint and the wood. and all of these things that homeowners had to keep track of because of this very simple piece that that had to be kept up. So so some of it's a little dry and boring, in my personal opinion. And there are also people making a full career off of this. So what does it really look like? And maybe you could be one of those making a full career off of it. So with the maintenance phase, you are monitoring the results. So how many users are we getting? Are there any sites that people, it's called the bounce rate, where people come to this one page and they bounce away from your site? That could show that maybe on that page there's a problem or something, you're not really capturing them or something like that. Um, Doing, marketing, so maintaining the audience of your website or of your software or whatever. Um, Sometimes it can involve training, making sure that the internal staff or your end users know how to use the system. Um, and absolutely software updates, security updates, not just within your system, not only when a problem arises within your system, which definitely could happen, but even the outside factors. So if you have all of your users are using a certain type of computer, and then the company changes and everyone's on a different computer. And so now your environment has changed, and that leads you to have to make some changes in your system because now you have more Mac users or more Android phone users or something like that has happened. So maintaining the viability of the site or the app or whatever the case may be, maintaining the audience, making sure that things are continuing to be running smoothly. So that's the life cycle. And you may be wondering, why is this a cycle? Well, as you think about that visual image, and as you are in that maintenance phase and you're gradually making changes, gradually making improvements, sometimes there's small tweaks that you make and you just, making little adjustments. But sometimes you get to a point where you're like, and again, think about the car buying experience or the home buying experience. Has there been a situation where your family has needed to change your home for some reason? The family got bigger, or people moved away, and the family in the home got smaller, or different needs changing, or a vehicle. You suddenly get kind of a big car hobby, or your family starts to grow and then you have more people in the car on a regular basis, or your commute changes and you need to travel more. Any of those things that can kind of pop up during the maintenance phase, that exposes things that may have been just minor tweaks, but now need to actually be a full, let's go back to that planning phase and think about the next vehicle or the next home or the career or graduate school after undergrad. Um, or in our case, the next version, the 2.0 version of that software that has been developed. So every time you move through that cycle, you are making improvements and making sure that you are meeting more needs, whether changes are impacting it or just through age and other things, time to make updates. Think about your phone and think about a few versions back of your phone that you have now. And the reason you got a new phone, maybe yours broke or maybe it got lost or something like that. But there's also new features with each new phone. And so that same process, the major cell phone companies go through, the computer companies, app developers go through the same process to go do continuous improvement as they move through the systems development life cycle. So, again, keep this in mind. It is something that we'll see applied through the semester. Think about your, kind of what these phases are. I've got it outlined here. Think about whether you are using this in your daily life or specifically in technology projects. Just keep this progression in mind, and it's going to help you to have much better outcomes as you move forward.